Hi, JustProfessor here. The first number you hear completely controls what you think is expensive or cheap, fair or unfair, good or bad. Stores know this, salespeople know this, negotiators know this, and they're using it against you every single day to make you spend more money and accept worse deals. Here's a quick test. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to notice your gut reaction. Is a bottle of wine that costs $40 expensive or cheap? Now, here's the same question, but different. Is a bottle of wine that costs $40 expensive or cheap if I just told you that some wines cost $500? Your answer probably changed, right? That's because the first number you heard became an anchor in your brain. And now every other price gets compared to that anchor, even though the anchor might be completely random and meaningless. This is the anchoring effect, and it's one of the most powerful ways your brain gets manipulated. The anchoring effect means that the first piece of information you get acts like a reference point for everything else that comes after. Your brain latches on to that first number, that first piece of data, that first impression, and then everything else gets judged relative to it. Even when that first piece of information is totally irrelevant or obviously wrong, it still affects your thinking. And here's what makes this really dangerous. Anchors work even when you know they're meaningless. Even when you're trying to ignore them. Even when you're consciously aware that someone is trying to manipulate you. The anchor still influences your judgment because it works on a level deeper than your conscious thinking. Let me show you how powerful this is. Researchers did an experiment where they had people spin a wheel with random numbers on it. The wheel would land on a number between 0 and 100. Then they asked people to guess what percentage of African countries are in the United Nations. Completely unrelated question, right? But here's what happened. People who spun a low number on the wheel gave lower estimates. People who spun a high number gave higher estimates. A totally random number that had nothing to do with the question still influenced their answers. That's how strong anchoring is. Stores use anchoring against you constantly, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Have you ever noticed how stores put their most expensive items right at the front or right at eye level? They're not expecting you to buy those items. They're setting an anchor. When you see a watch for $5,000, suddenly a watch for $500 seems reasonable, even though $500 is still a lot of money for a watch. But compared to the anchor of $5,000, it feels like a deal. This is why restaurants put really expensive items on their menu even though almost nobody orders them. That $100 steak on the menu makes the $40 steak seem affordable. If the most expensive thing on the menu was the $40 steak, it would feel expensive. But when it's sitting next to a $100 option, your brain recalibrates. The anchor changed your perception of what's normal. Sale prices work the same way. You see a jacket with a tag that says was $200, now $80. That original price of $200 becomes your anchor. $80 feels like an amazing deal compared to $200. But here's the thing. Maybe that jacket was never actually sold for $200. Maybe the store made up that number just to create an anchor. Or maybe the jacket is only worth $50 and $80 is still overpriced. But once that $200 anchor is in your head, it's really hard to think clearly about the real value. Car dealerships are masters of anchoring. The salesperson will start by showing you the most expensive car on the lot. They'll talk about all its features and how great it is. Then, when you say it's too expensive, they'll show you a cheaper option. That cheaper option is what they wanted to sell you all along, but now it seems reasonable because it's compared to the expensive anchor they showed you first. Negotiating salary is another place where anchoring matters a ton. Whoever says the first number sets the anchor for the entire negotiation. If you're applying for a job and they ask what salary you want, the number you say becomes the anchor. If you say too low, you've anchored the negotiation at a lower range and you'll probably end up with less money. If the company tells you their budget first and it's lower than you wanted, that becomes the anchor, and it's really hard to move up from there. This is why negotiation experts always say you should try to get the other person to name their number first. Let them set the anchor. If their anchor is higher than you expected, great. You just got a better starting point. If their anchor is lower than you wanted, at least you know where they're starting from and you can counter. But if you set the anchor too low yourself, you just cost yourself money. Anchoring happens in your personal life too, not just in sales and money situations. Let's say you're arguing with someone about what time to meet up. The first person suggests 9 in the morning. Even if that's way too early for you, your counteroffer will probably be influenced by that anchor. You might suggest 11 when you would have been perfectly happy with 1 in the afternoon. The anchor of 9 pulled your thinking toward earlier times. Or think about grading in school. Teachers often get influenced by the first few papers they grade. If they start by grading really good papers, those become the anchor for quality, and the next papers might seem worse in comparison. If they start with weak papers, those set a lower anchor, and the next papers might seem better. This is why some teachers shuffle papers or use blind grading, to avoid anchoring effects. Dating and relationships have anchoring too. Your first serious relationship sets anchors for what you think relationships should be like. If your first relationship was really good, you might have high standards anchored from that experience. If it was bad, you might have low standards because that bad relationship became your reference point for normal. It takes conscious effort to reevaluate what you actually want instead of just comparing everything to your first anchor. Social media engagement is built on anchoring. When you post something, the first few likes and comments create an anchor. If your post gets early engagement, it seems popular and more people engage with it. If it doesn't get early engagement, it seems unpopular and fewer people interact with it. The algorithm notices this too and shows popular posts to more people, which makes them even more popular. The anchor of initial engagement shapes everything that follows. Job listings do this too. When a job posting says 5 to 7 years of experience required, that's setting an anchor. Even if you have 4 years of experience and could do the job perfectly well, that anchor of 5 years makes you doubt yourself. Or when salary ranges are listed as 60 to 80,000, most people will anchor near the middle or lower end of that range in their mind, even though the top end is just as valid. So how do you protect yourself from anchoring? How do you make decisions based on actual value instead of whatever random number someone threw at you first? First, always do your own research before you see any anchors. If you're buying a car, research what that model actually sells for before you walk into the dealership. If you are negotiating salary, research what the market rate is for that position before anyone mentions a number. Having your own anchor based on real information helps you resist manipulation from other people's anchors. Second, actively ignore the first number you hear. When you see a "was this, now this" price tag, cover up the old price with your hand and only look at the current price. Ask yourself, would I pay this amount if I had never seen that other number? If you're in a negotiation and someone throws out a number, don't just counter close to their number. Step back and think about what you actually want, independent of their anchor. Third, set your own anchors first when possible. In negotiations, be the first to mention a number when you can. In discussions, frame the conversation with your reference points before others can frame it with theirs. Control the anchor, and you control the conversation. Fourth, use multiple reference points. Don't let one anchor dominate your thinking. If you're buying something, look at prices from 5 different places. If you're making a decision, gather information from multiple sources. Having multiple anchors helps them cancel each other out instead of one anchor having too much power. Fifth, wait before deciding, and anchors have the strongest effect in the moment. If you can delay your decision and think about it later, the anchor loses some of its power. Sleep on it. Come back to it tomorrow. Give yourself time for the anchor to fade a bit so you can think more clearly. Sixth, question where anchors come from. Is this number based on anything real, or is it arbitrary? Is the person giving you this anchor trying to manipulate you? Are they benefiting if you believe this anchor? Just being aware that someone might be using anchoring against you helps you resist it. The anchoring effect is everywhere. It's in every store you walk into, every negotiation you're part of, every decision you make where numbers or reference points are involved. The first number you see, the first option you're shown, the first piece of information you get. It all creates anchors that shape your thinking without you realizing it. Companies spend millions of dollars researching how to set the perfect anchors to make you buy more. Salespeople are trained to use anchoring techniques. Negotiators study this stuff to get better deals. And most people walk through life completely unaware that their choices are being shaped by anchors that might be totally meaningless. But now you know. You know that the first number is trying to control you. You know that was this price. Now this price is a psychological trick. You know that whoever speaks first in a negotiation sets the frame for everything that follows. You know that your brain automatically uses whatever reference point it encounters first, even when that reference point is garbage. So the next time you're about to make a decision involving money, value, or choices, stop and ask yourself, what anchor is influencing me right now? Where did this reference point come from? Is it legitimate, or is someone trying to manipulate me? Am I making this decision based on actual value, or am I just comparing to an arbitrary anchor? Don't let random numbers control your brain. Don't let other people set anchors that benefit them and hurt you. Do your research. Set your own reference points. Think independently about what things are actually worth to you. That's how you break free from the anchoring effect. That's how you make real decisions instead of anchored ones. Hit subscribe to learn about more psychological tricks that are controlling your decisions right now.